My first question is that why do birds hold such a crucial position in nature?
Okay, okay. It's a very interesting question. Lot of people ask, and then many of the people also know the answer, or at least part of the answer. Because birds, first of all, are our culture. They are part of our culture. They are also part of our many religious teachings as well, and they are part of that. So these are two starting point. Then birds also play a very crucial role in pollination of many flowers. And so they are because without the birds, the pollination of some at least some species will not take place. Hmm. And birds also spread the seed of many species, particularly the ficus species, the species which have got big seeds. Ficus has got very small seeds, but they have thousands, hundreds of thousands of seeds. So they spread out. So undigested seeds are evacuated from one place to another, and the trees don't walk around. They spread themselves through their seeds or roots. So the birds are extremely important as far as the seed dispersal is concerned. That's why hornbills and barbets and these are known as the engineers of the forest, because uh, barbets and hornbills and other species are good peddlers. They are spread. I spread the seeds from one place to another, and many of these seeds go into a big tree or its direction. So, and then birds also play a crucial role, or at least for some species. I won't say, when I'm saying this, it does not mean that every bird is playing or birds play in controlling the population of the insect. Um, I don't use the word pest because the pest is a human given word. All insects are important, but but they also control the population. They have crucial role in the herbivory of leaves and twigs and other things. So if all the leaves are eaten away by the caterpillars, then the tree will die or it won't grow so well. But the birds go and search caterpillars and eat them. Extremely important reasons for keeping the birds number in the good numbers and bird population in good numbers and protecting the bird families. I think I mentioned 5 or 6 reasons why the birds are important. Now coming back to the culture, hmm, every culture has got birds in there. Every civilization has birds in their culture. Sanskrit has got, there is a book on the birds in Sanskrit literature, and in Islamic culture, the birds are important, like the swallow and pigeons and doves, and they are considered important birds. And in Maya culture, or you take any culture, birds are a part of the culture. And sometimes they are good. I mean, Hindu culture, many birds are known as Vahan of the gods. And so they are not carrying that job. They are, in some places, they are considered as sacred, and they are literally, prayers are said about the birds. Yeah. And many, traditional, I would say, traditional also, like, they put in their environment. They also eat some species, but most of the species are protected because of various reasons, which I have already mentioned.
Yes. The second question is, Professor, that can you explain how birds act as an indicator of environment health?
Yes, it's a good question. Birds are crucial. Birds, butterfly, insect are very crucial indicator of the environment, because the better good environment or the better the environment, there will be more diversity of species of birds and butterflies and insects and many other species also. But let us keep birds in our focus. So the birds play, and there have been many studies which showed that even in urban environment, if you have gardens and lawns and shrubs and herbs and all protecting things, which we all aim for, because no one wants only concrete jungle. Most of the people would like to have garden among their in the surroundings or tree among their surroundings. And so the birds are a good indicator. If you have got more species or the more diversity of birds and more number of birds, it also shows that the environment is good. Birds are sensitive to pollution. So even if we are not able to detect it properly, or because human being is a very versatile and very adaptable species, but many species are not so adaptable. So if we have if we have pollution, then the birds, some species disappear. Similarly, whether the air pollution or the pesticide pollution, so the birds disappear. Presence of birds in a lawn. Uh, we don't have any lawns these days, but certainly in some areas we still have lawns or fields and like that. Itself shows that the environment is much better than in the areas where there are no birds or very little birds. Because when the environment is good, then there will be more insect and more worms and then more food for birds. And we had more nesting sites for birds. So birds are considered as a good indicator of the environment. And there are studies in and semi-urban areas where they use the birds as a major indicator.
Basically, losing the birds from the environment is indicating the damage in that environment.
Mm, yes, you are right.
Okay, okay, Bryce.
Birds also, presence of different species of birds also show the diversity of the trees, shrubs, and the environment there. Hmm. So is in the you may not be able to identify all the species or the trees or the shrubs. But if you see there are, for example, in place A there are 50 different species of birds, and in place B there are only 10 or 15 species, then you know that the place where 50 species of the birds are found is much better than the other. So sometimes we use the birds as an indicator. Okay, and very simple. Birds can also be identified quite easily compared to the insects, which take which involves technical and expertise to identify different species. Birds are much easier to identify.
My third question is that how does bird migration reflects the health of our ecosystem?
So this is a very interesting question again. We, almost I would say 30% of the species of birds migrated. And some migrate long distances, some migrate very short distances, or within the country or within the habitat they migrate or move around. For a short migration, we generally call it as a movement. But migration is generally long distance, probably 2,000 years, about kilometers, and that sort of a thing. Hmm. And when birds are migrating, first of all, uh, they also only the healthy birds migrate. So if the birds are living in a healthy environment, either during the breeding season or in the wintering season, they accumulate enough fat to migrate of 5,000 kilometers or 4,000 kilometers or whatever is the distance. So they won't be able to accumulate enough fat, enough body resources if they are not living in a good environment. They are wintering. So that is important. That will also show the importance of the when the birds are migrating. Some species will migrate non-stop in the sense that they fly, like the black-tailed godwit or the bar-tailed godwit, they migrate 11,000 kilometers without stopping. So some species migrate long distances, but most of this many species have the stopover sites. So if the bird is coming for say inner Mongolia or Mongolia, then it may have a 4 or 5 stopover site where it will stop either for overnight or for replenishment of this food and they don't migrate direct. No. So stopover sites also play a crucial role. If this also means that if we want to protect the migratory birds, we have to protect all the stopover sites. Like, for example, if we have got 5 stopover sites, and we can name them A, B, C, D, E, and the bird has got enough body resource of fat to migrate from A to B, then it will stop for 2 or 3 days, then B to C, and C to D, there like oil, and then finally it comes to the wintering area. Now, if we destroy the B site, hmm, so it has to migrate from A to C.
A direct migration.
B side is so if the B side is destroyed because of whatever reasons, or inspiration or pollution or whatever reasons, then the bird is not able to migrate from A to C because it does not have so much resources or body fat. It has body, so it will die, or it will, if it migrates, it will be very weak when it reaches site C. Hmm. So stopover sites are for that we need a collaboration between countries. Hmm. So if the bird is say coming from Siberia, then and then passing through Mongolia and then Eastern China or Western China, and then coming to the Himalayas to from either Nepal and Nepal to India, or the other way. Hmm. So it means that we have to collaborate we have to have a collaboration among all these countries, where conservationists should work together, government should work together uh, to protect these sites, so the birds are able to successfully migrate. That's why we have got international, agreements. Like the Ramsar Convention is one international agreement. The important bird areas is another international agreement which we had, that we save we identify the important bird areas in different parts of the world, and then we protect those important bird areas, or the Ramsar sites, or the forest. Sometimes we generally like the forest. Forest species, lot of forest species also migrate. We're anything down the ducks and geese and the cranes migrate, which is stone. So waders, ducks, geese, and a lot of species migrate, or the group of species migrate. But the birds, the forests also migrate. So we have to protect the in between forest also. Uh, For that, we need good research. And then for the good research to find out what are the crucial areas, we need good science. And good science is done only by ringing or satellite tracking or geolocators. So there are different techniques these days to study the migration of different species. And different species take their own course of migration. Hmm. I give example of one bird which we ringed it in Bharatpur. I was working at Bharatpur, and later also my colleague worked in Goinadev National Park. Hmm. There's a bird known as a lesser uh, white throat. Lesser white throat. It's a small bird of glory, 10 grams or 11 grams, 12 grams. So when it comes to Bharatpur, this is the time when you see the lesser white throat in Bharatpur. Bharatpur and many other parts of India. I'm just giving example. So its weight will be around 9 to 9.5 grams. Hmm. So when it is spent 4 or 5 months in Veladev National Park, and many other parts of India, so the weight becomes to 12 to 12.5 to sometimes 13 grams. And just see, this 3 or 4 gram is a weight gain in during its wintering areas. And that these grams are used by the bird to migrate back from the temperate region where it breeds. So protecting and diversity of and quality of these habitats is also very important.
I remember I used to see a lot of crows and that sparrows, that brown and white sparrows. But now we will see them. Is this a of damage environment that we have?
Yeah. As far as the crows are concerned, they are still very clearly large out of both the species which you mentioned, of the sparrow and crows. They are quite in big numbers in many parts of India, so it's not to worry. But first the cows. First, both these species are commensal to human being. Commensal means they live in the human-dominated environment quite easily because there is no problem for them, or they were vehicle, less problem. But the crows are dependent mainly on garbage and other things. In jungle, you will find very low population of crows. On the cities, you have got huge population of crows, particularly because of the garbage that we throw out. They are dependent on the garbage. Hmm. So as you clean up the city, then there's less food for the crows, and the crows will decrease in number. But in the rural area, they are still in big numbers. So it is not a worrying part that the crows have disappeared from some areas, and they are not threatened with extinction or whatever. Yeah, so there is it's not a big worrying part for us. And in Mumbai, there are some areas like Haryana and beyond Mumbai. There are some areas where thousands of crows are found, and they were the roost of nearly 20,000 crores in one place. But the roost is now less in number, but it is not, at least I am not worried about the decline with the crows in some certain areas because they are doing quite well. Same thing is with the house sparrow. House sparrow is dependent on not totally dependent, but the thing is that it has adapted to the human-dominated environment. Used to be. So the major reason for the decline of the house sparrow is not these watchtowers or not watch. I mean, really the uh, mobile tower. Most of the people think because mobile tower came and the house sparrow decreased. But I did a project on this and didn't find any correlation between the presence of the mobile towers and the decline in the house sparrows. House sparrows have declined mainly because of two reasons. There are not nesting sites in the new buildings. Mm. In my building where I live, there is no nesting site. So you have to put a nest boxes up there. There is no. In the olden houses, you would have in the thatch houses, you have got many places where the house sparrows can make nest. But in the modern building, do you see any nesting site for them? There is no cranny, there is no hole. So the nesting sites had disappeared from the modern buildings, and another reason is that when their houses sparrows are nesting for their chicks, growing chicks, they need proteinous diet insect, small insects. Oh, very very small insect. Because they can't kill a big insect like a grasshopper or things like that because they depend on the what we call is a small insect which used to be present in very large number in the lawns. When they, we have got gardens, but the lawns is almost like empty lawns because we don't have those insects. So the food is missing as far as the growing chicks is concerned. So if the food is not available to the chicks, then the population will decline, or the chicks will not be very healthy. So we have removed the in the modern buildings. We don't have the nesting sites, and in the lawns of in the open areas, not necessarily lawns, but even the shrubs and hedges and other places also, because of the pesticide, there are very very few small insects on which the adult hog sparrows can feed to the chicks. So these are the two major reasons, and then there are many minor reasons. And interestingly, we found one minor reason, but is that in the olden days, they used to transport grains in the bora. What do you call it? Bora. So, but with the wheel by the what is it? The material like rope material, like that, similar to that.
It is
Bora.
it is a rope packet like stuff in which the grains are packed.
Yes. Yes. So when it is being transported from, say, from the crop field, because the grain is kept in the bora in the crop field, and from there it is put it in the bullock cart. And so when the bullock cart is moving, then some grains will fall down on the road or wherever. Then from the bullock cart or the small truck, the grain is transported to another one, there also some grain will fall off. Because in the pora they have got a small um, spaces where the grain can come out. No, sorry,
A very tiny space are there in the book.
slightly grain will always come out,
Ah,
and then on there, from a truck or pull up about the boras of grain is transported to the mandis. Hmm. Where you will see when they are capped and there will be hundreds of thousands of the sparrow used to be there and they're eating from whatever. From mandis, it will go to the shop, a small shop, kirana shop. In the kirana shop, the boras are kept outside because the rice and they show that this is the wheat and this is whatever, bajra and other. So there also some grain will come out and people don't mind it if the sparrows are moving around and eating something. Now these boras have been changed to the plastic bag.
hmm.
So nothing will come out of the plastic bag. So at every stage, where the sparrows used to get some food, now in the plastic bag you are transporting the wheat or grains. There is no spillover. Hmm. So this is also one of the reasons, but not the main reason. I would say this is one of the minor reasons. So, so these are many reasons for the two main reasons for the decline of the sparrow. Sparrows can be brought back. Hmm.
Okay.
In the cities, if we have got hedges and trees and lawns and they are not by pesticide in the used, so the sparrows can be brought back by providing artificial nesting site, nest boxes we can provide.
Oh,
So, and many people do it.
hmm.
We also visited this in Mumbai. So, nest boxes you can provide. We can feed them with grains, but the grains are mainly used for adults and like that. So their grains are also fed to the chicks. But the chicks needs, as I said earlier, chicks need proteinous diet.
Insect.
So these are the small steps which can take, we can bring back the houses back, at least in some parts of the cities.
How can schools and institutions can promote the basically the field of ornithology? How can these institutions make the students to have interest in the in birds and their conservations?
So the best way to make people interested in conservation is to take them to the natural game. Who in classroom, if you teach the Paryavana Bachao or Ye Karo, they will not understand it very good. So if you take them to the field, of not necessarily you have to go to a national park or a science field, just your lawn, I mean, garden. In a most of the cities have some gardens. You take them to the garden, and there you can show them different species of not only birds only, but flies and insects and when it's and when it is shrubs and herbs and flowers. So some people will get interested in that. Now, if you want to show the horror of the pollution, so if you take them and show that this river or the wetland is polluted, then it will remain in their mind that and you show a good wetland which is unpolluted with flowers and lotus and some birds moving around or flying around or sitting swimming in the water. So that will this contrast will remain in the mind. Mm. If you pollute, then there's very little biodiversity left. If you keep it clean, then there's a lot of biodiversity. This is much better than teaching in a class. Of course, we have to teach some theoretical things in the classes. I mean, there's no substitute the class teaching. But for teaching nature, it is best to take them. And I would say that if going to nature or the park should be made a compulsory part of the teaching process. Which in the at present it is not. We also tried when I was in Bombay, at least with YP, we had a conservation education center with where we bring our children, school children, college, and not only school children, college teachers or college students also and teachers also. Hmm. So once they come to our conservation education center, it is a different world for them, and they all we are fascinated by that. Whatever we are called to as some good teachers, educators to teach and different things. One more thing which we did it in Mumbai, and I must thank my colleagues there, Dr. Shobha Lakshmi and others, that we made a course for teachers training exercise or teachers training course. Hmm. Because if you teach the teacher, then the teacher will be every year teaching the students. Hmm. So teachers training is also extremely important, and many teachers have power like that because they are all interested, and when they see the enthusiasm of the student, they will also try to learn and they try to improve their knowledge about nature. So we should, in colleges and schools, we should have a teachers training. Hmm. And the teacher should be taken to along and the student, because then it will be a replication effect. I can teach 30 students or 40 students, and it's quite costly for me or I even to go and or bring the student. But the teacher can teach probably in her lifetime or his lifetime many thousands of students. So we have to make aware of the teachers to the conservation issues and about environmental issues. I must also add here that it is not the school children; it is also the decision makers who have to be taught of conservation, because today they are taking the decision today. We can't wait for student to become, say, after in 20, 20, 30 years, he or she becomes a district collector and then be taking decision. So we should also have a course and or the exercise or taking them to the decision makers. That should be done at a higher level. In the sense that, and many decision makers are excellent. Many district magistrates are excellent conservationists also. And I know many in my book also I have mentioned there is one chapter about the conservationist district magistrates who have played a very important role in conservation wherever they go. So once they are convinced, once they are converted, then all their decisions are not, but the most of the decisions are not damaging to the environment, but playing a positive role.
Okay, Professor.